Hotep, I'm Dr. Gloria Lattimore Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents the H3O Art of Life show. The title of this show is Addictions in the Family. And my guest is Dr. Dora Dixie, who is Medical Director of the Women's Treatment Center. And I noted when I read your biographical sketch that you work with women and their children. And that's what gave me the idea of approaching this topic from the point of view of family, the effects of addictions on families. Because obviously when someone is addicted to a substance, they're not the only one who's affected. So
That's
tell
correct.
me your experience and let's talk about the work that you do.
My experience in addiction medicine actually began in 1988 when I was a resident in family practice. I was doing my training, and we had to do a rotation in addiction medicine for 2 months. That was required. And I needed extra money, so I started working part-time at Brass Foundation, which I don't think is in existence anymore. But it was a
Hattie
methadone.
Wash there when you were there? I know of
I want to
Brass.
say Eldoris Mason
Okay,
was the owner or director
all right.
then, and she gave me a job. I did not have an idea of what I was doing, but I needed some money, and she was willing to take a chance on me. So I started working in the methadone maintenance program in 1988 and working with women and men at that time. And working there just blew away all of my myths that I had in my mind about what a drug addict was. Because heretofore had been a lot of book knowledge and a lot of I heard or what I had maybe seen in a movie, but no real experience of working with opiate dependents. And in '88, there wasn't that much cocaine around, every once in a while. So most of the people were either opioid, heroin dependent, or alcoholics, or a combination of both. And working there just blew away all the myths that I had in my mind about what a woman drug addict was supposed to look like and be like. She was supposed to be black, in my opinion. She was supposed to be black. She was supposed to have this really nappy hair. She was supposed to be ugly and had rotten teeth and uneducated and just an undesirable human being, just a despicable person. But that was not my experience. And certainly no pregnant woman would ever use drugs, because that just didn't fit into my brain of what a drug addict was, let alone a female drug addict. It's just...
And what did you encounter?
What? Well, I encountered just the opposite. These beautiful women, some well-educated women, drop-dead gorgeous women, intelligent women that just got caught up in the whole addiction scene. And I say caught up because no one sets out to say, oh, you know, I'm going to be a drug addict when I grow up. They try the drugs for any number of reasons, and for far too many, they don't know how to walk away, or they become unable to walk away from the drugs and say, that's enough. I don't want to do this anymore. And the brain changes under the influence of drugs, and these people are unable to quit by themselves a lot of the time. And I say a lot of the time, not all of the time, because we only have statistics on the people that come into treatment. We know nothing about those people that do it on their own, that never enter into formal treatment, but get better or don't get better or die. We don't know anything about those people. We don't have any hard numbers.
Do we have any ideas about how so many of our people get introduced to drugs? I mean, obviously you can go into the liquor store and buy liquor, or you can send somebody in there who's old enough to buy liquor. But you have children going to school.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as parents know, the children are going to school, they're coming back home, then all of a sudden you find that you've got a child who is sniffing glue, or you've got a child who has found some other way to, quote, get high. And now you either have a child who is addicted, or at least a child who is having the experience of using substances to get high. So I know that getting high is sort of like a rite of passage. But how is it that so many of our children come into contact with the hard drugs, with the crack cocaine, with the heroin, with whatever else is out there? Because I confess, I'm not sure what all there is out there.
Well, a number of ways. Probably the less talked about way is their parents are getting high.
Oh.
There's plenty. I have treated so many men and so many women and teenagers that get high with mom and dad. So if I get my child interested in drugs, especially if it's a girl and she's pretty, and I get her, I'm the mother, my daughter, I get her caught up in the drug scene, then she can go out and hustle for me because she's young and energetic and she's pretty, and she's going to get more money prostituting than I would.
Are you telling me that there are conscious decisions of that kind being made?
Yeah.
As we speak?
As we speak. At the Women's Treatment Center, where I've been for the last 21 years, on one occasion there were 3 generations of women in the building in treatment. The grandmother, the mother, the daughter, or the granddaughter. 3 generations, and their children. Mother's little kids, young adult daughter and her kids, and the grandmother. And they all get high together. So that's one way. Older sisters, older brothers, uncles, aunts, neighbors, friends. So you pick a way, and there it is.
So we have neighborhood pushers. To show you my naivete, I was talking to somebody and I was saying that we didn't have methadone factories in our community because I didn't really know. I associated that with the other community. And the person who I was speaking to told me, yes, we do. That we now have that level of sophistication where we are now, producing drugs. We are not just consuming them, but we are now producing them.
Right, the street chemist.
The street chemist.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to say about this except to say that there has to be something that can be done other than just treat this problem forever and ever and ever. I guess what I want to know is what kind of preventive measures can be taken to try to insulate the children against this sort of thing, to make it unpopular, to make it distasteful, to make young people not want to pursue getting high as a pastime.
I think there are a lot of things in what you just said, but to decrease the demand as opposed to getting behind the disease and trying to catch up and treat the disease, but to decrease the demand. And the only way that's going to happen is that the children have something else to look forward to, that their life is full of loving parents, extracurricular activities, school, family time, church time, time with God. Children that have both their parents in the home and their parents don't do drugs, they're less likely to do drugs. Children that are involved in sporting activities, team sports or individual sports, are less likely to do drugs. Parents that are involved in their children's day-to-day activities, parents that censor their friends, those are the children that are less likely to do drugs. Is that 100% all the time? No, but it certainly does decrease the incidence of drug use in the child.
So what we have to do then is to reduce the odds that are stacked against the young people. In other words, the as you say, the risk factors are the broken homes,
Exactly.
the failure of the parents to be involved in the lives of the children, the failure of the parents to exercise parental authority in the selection of
Exactly.
friends and activities, finding extracurricular things for the children to engage in so that they will have something to look forward to. The involvement of children in spiritual and religious activities, these kinds
Exactly.
of things would be the ideal kinds of things to offset that, if not always 100%. Certainly, they would be the best efforts. These efforts would be better.
Those are the best efforts, and that's what the statistics say of the children that are less likely to become addicted or even try drugs is, you know, I don't want to hurt my mother, or I don't want my father to be disappointed in me.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the children that are less likely to get started.
It's amazing to me how people who have drug habits that are costly, that cost a lot of money, can find that money on a regular basis to be able to buy those drugs. You know, because if you figure, if I had to, for example, if I didn't have income and I had to find my mortgage payment, I don't know where I would look. You know, so
they learn resourcefulness, and they do illegal things that you probably wouldn't dream of doing.
Okay.
To get the money.
What kind of resources do they resort to?
Well, they steal.
Okay.
They write bad checks. I've learned a lot about the criminal justice system working at the Women's Treatment Center.
Mm-hmm.
They get involved in identity theft, prostitution, shoplifting, to name a few.
So
they sell drugs.
Okay.
They work on the corners. They look out. They panhandle. Some of these panhandlers are making over $100 a day. So.
And spending it.
Well, yeah, they're spending it, but I'm amazed that they get that much.
Right.
But some more than that.
Right.
If their stories are true. They sell their children.
Sell them
for sex. Now, I know that just hurts you.
It hurts.
It's
well, you know,
truth.
it's not the first time I've heard it, and I'm going to be affected the same way.
Yeah.
Every time I hear it, I had a show once called Children of Wrath, and we were mostly talking about foster children and foster care, and some of the horrendous experiences that they have with uncaring people who are just in it for the money.
Right.
And so the children are badly treated and abused, and very often sexually abused as well, or even exploited in that way. And you know, when you think about parents who don't have a blood relationship with the children, you know, exploiting the children, that's hard enough to think an adult would do that. But to think that this would be your own flesh and blood, how that's unnatural. That's all I'm saying. That's why it's so alarming to me, because, you know, in the animal kingdom even, you know, animals protect their young. And so to think that humans would not protect their young and not prevent them from being harmed, or not put them in harm's way voluntarily is it's a stretch. But there are people who will do that. They will actually put their children in harm's way.
Right.
Because of their own appetite.
Yes. When a person is addicted to a drug, they think that they will die if they don't get it. And most people will do all manner of things not to die.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how you get this desperation.
Okay. So
and
there
these unnatural acts.
Okay. Well, I do know of some cases where, in fact, my first impression with this was that the relationship between an addict and his drug of choice is the strongest relationship he or she has.
That's true.
Because the relationship between he and his mother, his wife, his sister, his child is secondary, if at all. If it exists at all, it is secondary, and you have just made me understand the reason. Because life depends, or at least the perception is that life depends on that relationship remaining intact.
Correct.
So they can't tell the mother the truth when they're borrowing money. They can't keep promises that they make to people. They can't say, I'm not going to do this ever again, and really mean it, because they're not in charge of themselves.
That is absolutely true.
So what is your role, doctor? I'm sure you're not dispensing any drugs. So when you are treating patients, are you counseling them, and are you offering them measures by which they can maintain some sort of equilibrium? Because I'm sure that an addict needs something. If it's not the drug itself, there needs to be something that is a stand-in for that.
Correct. Well, I do a lot of different things.
Okay.
One is the detox, which is the first step, is to get the person off the drugs, and do that in a humane way so that they don't suffer needlessly.
How do you do that?
Withdrawal is very painful.
Okay.
And if it's alcohol, it can be life-threatening.
Okay.
And if it's some other drug and the people have medical problems, it can be life-threatening again. So on the detox unit, when a woman comes into the detox unit, depending on what drug she's dependent on, will determine which medication I order.
Okay.
And
so they'll be hospitalized then?
Well, the Women's Treatment Center is not a hospital.
Okay.
We do have a non-hospital medical detox unit.
Okay.
Where they are medically monitored.
Okay.
As opposed to medically managed, which is hospital level care.
Okay.
So on the detox unit at the Women's Treatment Center, the patients are given comfort meds. If they're heroin or opiate dependent, they're given methadone and clonidine maybe to help with the withdrawal symptoms. If it's an alcoholic, they're given a benzodiazepine like Valium or Librium so that they will not die. Alcohol withdrawal is deadly. So if you have someone that is a card-carrying alcoholic and they say, well, when I wake up in the morning, I got to have a drink. If I got to drink every 2 or 3 hours. If I don't drink, I sweat, I shake, I have seizures when I try to quit. You don't want to tell that person to quit on their own. They need to be supervised and treated for the withdrawal symptoms. So that's what I do on the detox unit, which is really the easiest thing to do, is to get someone detoxed. The hard thing is to get them to stay off the drugs. And that's where treatment comes in, inpatient or outpatient. Inpatient, they stay, they have counselors, they talk with the counselors about how to stay sober. If they have mental illness, they see a psychologist. If they need medication, they'll see a psychiatrist. So at least 30 to 60% of the people that are chemically dependent have a dual mental illness. It could be depression, anxiety, personality disorder, schizophrenia, bipolar, you name it. The most common is anxiety. A lot of anxiety. So when a person is drinking or doing drugs, the anxiety goes away.
Their anxiety stems from,
Wherever
do they ever know?
wherever anxiety comes from.
Okay, I'm just saying, are they anxious about, is it a fear of death? Is it a fear of not having a home or not having a job or not?
When a person has an anxiety disorder, they don't always know what they're anxious about. They just don't feel right. And it isn't always because of anything in particular, where the heart will start racing and they're sweating and they feel like they're going to die and they get short of breath. That isn't always situational. It just happens for whatever the reason. It happens. And then we have the post-traumatic stress. So a lot of terrible things have happened to a lot of people. And they have flashbacks and they relive those situations, so they do the drugs to try to numb those painful memories and painful feelings. So if they need mental health help, they get it from a psychologist or a psychiatrist or just a therapist for someone to talk to.
You know, this post-traumatic stress disorder, somehow I think that if you live in a culture where stress and trauma are a part of the life of the community, you really can't call it post, because it's ongoing. It's going on all the time. You know, when I think about young people going back and forth to school, with school bars up in the school and security guards and almost the equivalent of a police station in the building, you know, and kids getting shot down on the street, shot down on the porches, you know, just anywhere you are, you know, your life can be taken from you for no reason at all, or for gang-related reasons, as we often hear. But to live under that kind of a cloud, you know, where your life is so tentative, you know, where your life is not valued and can be erased at, you know, on impulse. That stress is not post. That is present stress disorder.
I understand what you're saying.
That we're living with all the time.
The post-traumatic stress part comes in as if you're in a quiet place, or you're reading a book or watching a movie, and there's something in the movie that triggers an uncomfortable experience that you had, and you feel as if you're there having that unpleasant experience all over again. That's what post-traumatic stress is. You're reliving
a past experience.
Even if that experience was just yesterday.
I think I actually experienced what would be called post-traumatic stress briefly. I went to a place, I went on a retreat in a rural area, and we had an exercise in which at night we were to hold on to each other, but be blindfolded. And I think the only person who could see was the person who was at the front of the line. And I don't remember what the exercise was about then, but it probably was about teaching us to have faith or confidence or something. But at any rate, we were all walking, you know, and there were drums playing. And so we were supposed to be following the sound of the drum. And so we could, you know, we could hear the drum over here, and then all of a sudden the drum would be someplace else, and the person who was leading, you know, would be leading, and the person ahead of you would be turning, and you'd be turning with that person, and so forth and so on. And for me, that experience brought to mind the experience of slaves. I felt like I was in a line of slaves, and we were being led to someplace. and we didn't know where it was, but we were being led to danger. And I had just such a terrible time with that experience. And I thought at the time, and I told people about it, I thought at the time, I said, I don't know if experiences like that get caught up in the DNA and get passed down through the genes. But I certainly felt exactly the same way that I think a slave would have felt if the slave had been in bondage and was being led to somewhere. It was not cute. It was not funny. It was not curious. It was terrifying. So I'm wondering if some of the things that happened to us as a people in the past may still be lurking in the DNA.
It may very well be.
And may be motivating some of the conduct that we see, some of the behavior, and some of the responses that we have.
It may very well be.
I don't know. That just made me think about that, because this traumatic disorder, they say men who have been in the military, who have been in battle very often, have these flashbacks where they remember, periods.
Right.
And it's a horrifying feeling. And you've been doing this for how long?
Since 1988.
What do you do for the children? If you say you have the mothers and the children, or the grandmothers and the children?
When the children come in and the mother goes to the detox unit, the children go into a nursery.
Okay. And nothing is done with them. They just spend their time with
being little kids.
Being children.
Being children, being loved, being cared for, and they go to school.
Okay.
They're in daycare. If they're old enough, they're in pre-K.
Okay. Do you have women who have been incarcerated in your program?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
And were they with their addiction problem while they were incarcerated, or did they get it after being incarcerated?
Usually the women that come to the Women's Treatment Center have gotten in jail in the business end of drugs. It is a business. So they got caught either shoplifting to get money, shoplifting to sell something, to get some money to buy some drugs, or they were selling drugs, or they had possession of drugs, or they possession with intent to sell or intent to deliver. There are many, many laws dealing with the drugs, but most of them that come through there have been in there because of some drug-related crime. And they come. Are they still able to use drugs in jail? Some of them are. Some of them come out of jail and they go into withdrawal because they've been using while they were in jail. Most of them come out drug-free and they go right into treatment. Or they'll go into treatment in lieu of going to jail.
Okay.
So they have the drug court. So oftentimes the judges will send people to treatment instead of sending them to jail. Because if they were not addicted, they would not have done the crime.
I visited Dwight Correctional Center on a few occasions, and the very first time I went and I was able to talk to a group of women, I learned that the majority of them were in there for drug-related offenses. And you won't be incarcerated at Dwight unless you have a sentence of at least 20 years.
Really?
Yes, ma'am. That's what I was told. That you have to have a sentence of at least 20 years with just, I said the same thing to you as you said. Really, I could hardly believe that. And I'm looking at young women,
right?
And some of them were in tears because they were separated from their children, and the DCFS or somebody was supposed to see to it that they had regular visits with their children, but had fallen behind in that schedule, and so they weren't seeing their children. And many of them told me, and of course you never know whether stories are true or not, but many of them told me that they were not they had boyfriends who were dealing drugs, and they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And they went down with the boyfriend, or sometimes in a few cases, the boyfriend asked them
To take the rap.
to take the rap because if
That's
they
right.
took it, they would get more time. And
Right.
so they did, and they were incarcerated, and these boyfriends were
Abandoned
not
them.
coming to visit,
That's
you know,
right.
abandoned. So they were separated from their children. They were separated from the men that they made this supreme sacrifice for. And it's just heartrending to see the havoc that drugs wreak on our community. You know, that we fill up the prisons because of our involvement with the drug trade. And then we fill up the treatment centers because of our involvement with the drug trade. And then our lives are wrecked, and we wreck lives for generations.
That's what's happening. It's just a reality. And we can't change the past, but looking forward, we have to decrease the demand. We're not going to decrease the supply. But if we decrease the demand, if I can get my children and my grandchildren to say no, they don't want to grow up to be a drug addict, because I know the work that Mama does or Lala does, I don't want to do that, then it will be different in the future. But that's the key. Decrease the demand for the drug.
And the other key is to increase the potential for a future. You know, if you've gotta look at something in terms of how it will affect you in the future, you've got to see one.
Right. You've got to see one. You've got to have a dream. And someone in the child's life has to instill some dreams. There's a pitiful child that you see that has no dream. You can't help them because they'll do anything. They don't want much. What my grandmother used to say, they can't stand prosperity. They have no big dream. If it's just to go downtown and go to the show or go to all the museums in Chicago, they don't have any dreams. You don't have any dreams.
Or to
You'll fall for
leave
anything.
Chicago and to go someplace else.
Just to see something different
right.
from the city. But that's the answer, in my opinion, of having done this since 1988, is decrease the demand. And people do get better. Plenty of people that have been addicted to all manner of drugs do get better.
And then they go to schools and they try to convince the children that they don't want this life, and they tell the children. I know a person who has a good sized ministry, you know, who will stand before you and, you know, tell the world, you know, how she abandoned her children and how she the depths she reached before she was able to come out. And she, most of the time when you hear stories like that, though, there has been divine intervention, you know.
There is always divine intervention.
That, you know, God opened the door and they saw the light.
Right.
And they went through that door and didn't
Right.
look back.
Right. Some people call that a moment of clarity,
Okay.
where you can see a way out. And when that little window opens, you have to run for that opening.
And you have to, and you can't look back,
You
and you can't
cannot.
do Sodom and Gomorrah.
No, you can't. You can't go back. Every time a person relapses, it's more difficult to get detoxed again, to get sober. But they keep trying, and I encourage them. Welcome back to the Women's Treatment Center.
And then you go back to work
Go
on the
through
same case with the same hope
That's
that
right.
this will be the last time.
That's right. Where there is life, there is hope.
I'm understanding now that there are actually elders who have addiction problems.
The oldest,
Would that be from prescription drugs, or would
not
it?
always. The
Okay.
oldest patient that I have treated was a man that was 83.
Oh my goodness
And
gracious.
he was very lonely. He was an IV heroin user, and he was very lonely. He said because all of his friends are dead.
Mm-hmm.
Because most drug addicts don't live to be 83. Most people don't live to be 83.
I know.
So, and it was so funny. This old man, he was at the medical clinic at Near South on 35th in Michigan, and one of the doctors brought me in to see him because he had what she thought was a funny looking rash on his arms right up here.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in there and I looked at his arm. I says, "How long you been shooting drugs in your arm?" And he looked at me. I said, "Well, how long's it been?" And he dropped his head. It's been some 70 years, 60-something years.
Really?
This man was shooting drugs in his arms. And he's very well dressed, nice haircut, 83 years old, still living with his mama.
Lord have
And he was
mercy.
lonely because all his friends that he used to get high with were dead. The oldest woman I've treated at the Women's Treatment Center is 72. She's been doing heroin all of her adult life. So, what people don't seem to realize is that heroin, in and of itself, does not cause medical problems. It causes social consequences. But it doesn't make you sick. It doesn't cause heart disease, lung disease. If you don't get an infection from shooting it, it's not going to make you sick. It'll make you high. It can kill you if you do too much. But it's not going to damage you.
It would seem to me the damage would come from neglect, from not taking care of yourself. Because when you're high, you're not going to eat properly. You're not probably going to sleep, in a healthy fashion. You're probably not going to do much of anything that's healthy.
Right. But it's not the drug itself
Right.
that's making you sick. It's the consequences
Mm-hmm.
of your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike cocaine. Now, cocaine will kill you quick
Why?
and in a hurry. You will have a heart attack,
Okay.
or you will have a seizure,
Okay.
or your lungs will stop working, or your kidneys will stop working, or you'll have a stroke, or you'll make yourself go blind. Cocaine is a far more dangerous drug than heroin. And alcohol is the worst of all of them.
Why is it that people don't classify alcohol as a drug unless they're in your profession?
I don't know. I don't know. But it
People-
is a drug.
People have parties and they have open bar,
Right.
and it's just as much a drug as
Right.
as any other thing.
Absolutely. And there are far more alcoholics than all the heroin addicts, cocaine's put together. It's a much bigger problem.
Because it's so free. I mean,
Right.
alcohol is socially approved.
Right.
You can drink with everybody. I mean,
Right.
you're expected to drink when you're celebrating.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. That is true.
right.
But it kills profoundly the alcohol. And
Yeah.
I'm seeing younger and younger women, 21, 22 years old, full-blown withdrawal, shakes, seizures, sweats, throwing up. Years ago, I wouldn't see a woman, she'd be late 40s, 50s, 60s, to see that level of withdrawal. Not so now. These young women are drinking. And we're putting all our attention on the drugs. The alcohol is a much bigger problem. They're drinking. What do you drink? A fifth of vodka every day? Every day. And they come into treatments because they can't quit.
It would seem to me that drinking that quantity of alcohol would just immobilize the person. They couldn't go nowhere or do anything.
Well, you get accustomed to it, and you can go and do plenty of stuff.
Oh my goodness.
Until you can't go and do anything without the alcohol, because it's progressive. All of the addictions are progressive. It starts out as fun. It starts out as once. And then the brain changes.
Yes. Talk to me a little about that. How much can you say about the rewiring of the brain as a result of substance overload?
Well, I won't say that the brain is rewired.
Okay.
Because all our brains are made up pretty much the same. And we have a pleasure center or a pleasure network that makes you feel good when you do something that for you is pleasurable. You bake a cake and you're all happy. Well, that is the same system that is in work when you do drugs, only you feel much more happy.
You're happier.
Happier, like ecstatic, where you cannot even describe how good you feel. And now I don't have to remember the pain. Or this just feels great. It just feels wonderful. And I want it to last forever.
But it doesn't.
But it doesn't. So you do it again.
I'm told that the second time or the third is not ever going to be that first time.
Exactly, because from the first time, the brain starts changing. And what happens is, okay, I do this behavior, and I get this reward, and it's wonderful. So the brain wants to always do that behavior to always get that reward. And that's when the people lose control, because the brain really does change. And just like if you're dreaming and you're doing something in your dream, or you're awake and you're doing something, your brain doesn't know the difference if it's a dream or if it's real. It just knows how it feels. So it's going to work your body to do what it wants your body to do to continue to have that feeling. And that's a simplistic way of saying how the brain actually does change under the influence of the drugs and the alcohol.
So now your drinking problem is now in control. It's in control of you.
Exactly.
Okay, so the alcohol is drinking you.
That's one way to look at it. The alcohol is definitely a priority, and you must drink or you will get sick. Really, 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 really sick. And nobody wants to be sick.
Right.
And you'll do anything not to have that pain.
Right.
And then the anxiety, where they really feel like they're going to die. And most of us don't want to die.
Well, of course.
And then there's the physical pain.
Pretty universal.
You know, joint pain, muscle pain. Everything hurts. If you've ever had the flu, multiply that by 10. And that's what heroin withdrawal
Just
feels
miserable.
like. Yeah, it's awful. And you're totally out of control. You lose your bowels. You lose your bladder. You're throwing up for days. And I know just a little bit of heroin will make this go away. Or one drink, or you're shaking so much you can't even drink. I've had to hold women's hands so they could take their pills, just to hold it because they're shaking so badly from the alcohol withdrawal. Nobody wants that.
No.
Nobody sets out and says, I'm going to be an alcoholic when I grow up.
Well, sometimes people become addicts, and I know of at least one close case of someone who was injured in an attempted robbery, and they were shot, and the bullet shattered the liver or part of it, and was lodged in there in a place where it couldn't be removed. And so the result was that there was always high level of toxicity and a lot of pain going on. This person was in and out of the hospital no less than maybe 24 times in 1 year, where they would put a tube in and draw off all this bile and give powerful painkillers. And at some point, that person was a full-fledged addict.
That's right.
Couldn't do otherwise because he had become addicted to prescription drugs. How often does that happen? I don't know.
A lot.
That people have given, especially with painkillers.
Painkillers and anxiolytics or sedative hypnotics, pills to stop you from being anxious. And the whiter you are, the blonder you are, the prettier you are, the easier it is to get whatever pill you want. I don't feel good. I'm a little nervous, I'm a little anxious. Oh, here, honey, take this pill. Or this hurts, or that, here, take this Vicodin. Enough, I read an article preparing for this show that I think it was in 2009, enough Vicodin prescriptions were written and filled to give every American one Vicodin pill every 6 hours for 3 months.
Well, well.
And that's on us.
Okay.
That's on us doctors.
Okay.
And pharmacists, because there are some unscrupulous pharmacists that
will actually
sell
dispense.
That sell their wares. Back in the 60s and 50s and maybe before then, the pharmacists were selling cough syrup with codeine. So now they're selling whatever
else they can get.
Whatever they can get some money for. Not all pharmacists, but some. There's some dishonest people. And doctors are so willing to please the patient, get you out of my face because you're getting on my nerves. And they'll write, what do you want? What else? And just write it, take your money, see ya.
I came down with the flu years and years ago, and the doctor gave me a prescription, and when I had the prescription filled, I looked at it, and it was Valium. One of the prescriptions was Valium. I didn't take it, but I said, why did you give me Valium? He said, because you became ill so quickly, I thought that you might be anxious. So
I didn't tell you I was anxious.
I didn't say I was anxious, but that was out of the goodness of his heart.
Right.
You know, that he gave me something for the flu symptoms, but he also gave me something because he felt that I would be frightened that I became ill so quickly. But I didn't take the Valium, but I thought, you know, and it happened only one time, but how often does this happen? Do doctors prescribe things for people, you know, that they take because they think they need to take them, and maybe the things that they are prescribing are not necessarily needed, you know, and consequently they could create some sort of situation. But I think the best idea is to try to take as good care of oneself as one can, and to try, as you say, you know, not to have a dream. We need help with the dreaming. You know, the artists in the community help us with the dreams. In other words, they create the stories and the films and the music and all the things that entertain the mind, you know, and engage the mind. You know, you can go, they tell me that the Avengers has now made $1 billion.
I believe it.
You know, because young people and older people alike, and particularly men, see themselves, they imagine themselves as a superhero, you know, and while they're watching this film, you know, they take on these attributes. So our artists help us to imagine ourselves as being greater as you know, we can aspire to. I believe I can fly. You know,
Right.
we can aspire to things that we may not even see regularly, but because it is brings the imagination forth and it marries it to an idea of an aspiration, then we can see that, you know. But who is creating these stories? Who is capturing the imagination of our children? Not to be thugs and all rap singers, you know, not all to be wearing their pants down around their shoes, you know. But who is working to inspire the young people to want to grow up to be like you, to want to be, I can be a doctor. I know I can because I see one, you know. I don't want to be an addict. I want to be a person who serves. You know, I want, as Dr. Mason was saying, you know, when he saw this, he thought, I want to do that. I want to serve. I want to be able to help people. I want to do something with my life to motivate. I know ministers try to do it every Sunday in the pulpit. They try to bring some inspiration to the community that to their congregations. But lots of our people don't go to places where they get that kind of inspiration.
True.
And the mass media is not that helpful.
Not always.
When it comes to inspiring people for greatness, you know, Barack Obama did a lot for us. You know, people started telling their children, see, you can be anything you want to be. Well, not actually, but certainly you can be more than you are with some effort and some good fortune and some grace. We all know we have to have some grace.
That's true.
To get this done. How did you become a doctor? How? I mean, you know, you're a woman. You went to medical school. It costs a lot of money.
No, it really didn't.
Okay.
Not when I went.
Okay.
When I was, I went to college for 2 years. First, when right out of high school.
Okay.
I went to college for 2 years, and I got expelled.
Okay.
Because I was naughty. And I don't have to tell you what I did.
Okay.
So I had 2 kids, I got married, and I worked at different jobs, and I worked at Jewel Foods for 4 years. And I said, I am going nuts. I cannot do this for the rest of my life. And I had a girlfriend that was working there with me. And she said, Dixie, I'm getting ready to go to college, and I want you to come and go to college with me. So I said, okay, Brenda, I'll go to college with you. So I quit my job. I went to college, went back to college full time. I got on public aid. I was in Section 8 housing, and I went to college full time for 2 years, and I got my degree. And I was dating this guy, got unmarried. I was dating this guy my senior year or junior year of college, and I was planning to be a physical therapist. Because at one point I had worked as a ward clerk at Hines VA, and I had worked, it was right after the Vietnam War, and I made friends with guys that were wounded and had lost limbs and were in wheelchairs, and said, I want to be a physical therapist. I want to help these people get back on their feet. And I was dating this guy, and he says, why don't you be a doctor? And I said, okay, honey, I'll be a doctor for you. So I applied to medical school.
And got admitted.
And I got admitted to, where did I get admitted? I got admitted to Rush. I got accepted at Rush, University of Illinois, and the Chicago Medical School. And I went to the University of Illinois because it was the cheapest. So that's how I ended up being a doctor. I did not have great support in my family. When I told my mother that I was going to quit my job and I was going to go back to college and I was going to major in biology, she called me a bunch of choice names and asked me, was I a fool?
Mm-hmm.
And what in the blankety blankety blank are you going to do with biology? So I just shrugged it off. And I had 2 kids, I was a single parent, and I finished college and I went to medical school. And then I did my training.
And then you did your internship.
And then I did my internship.
And then you did your residency.
And then I did my residency.
And now you're the medical director.
Right. And then I did a fellowship in faculty development with the emphasis in addictions. Because the truth of the matter is, addicted people were all around me. I just didn't know what I was looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not know what a profound effect of growing up with addictions had done to me. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the truth of why I'm in addictions. What has this disease done to me personally?
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, okay, I get it. I understand. Now how can I be compassionate? How can I love the unlovable? So here I am, since 1988, practicing being non-judgmental, trying to love the unlovable, and help these women and men realize that they are more than a bag of dope, and you can do something else than just this. This is not why you're here on earth, to waste your life away. And if you believe in the devil, and if you believe in sin, then addiction is a perfect weapon, because you're only focused on yourself when you're a drug addict. You are not focused on any kind of higher power. You're not focused on anything spiritual. You're not focused on any kind of God. You are focusing on yourself. And if that's what the devil wants us to do, then it's a perfect disease.
Well, Dr. Dixie, you have just been the finest guest, because you have just been from the moment that I invited you to come. You were so accommodating, and you have shared so thoroughly with us, and I'm sure that your show is going to help a lot of people.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you, and I told you I didn't know I was going to love you this much.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for being my guest, and I hope that you'll be able to make the difference that you want to make, because you have chosen a field where you can be of great